Now, if y'all ain't never heard of gun trucks, that's a damn shame because these things were some of the most ambushed units in the entire Vietnam War. We're talking today about boys who earned medals of honor riding in the back of converted cargo trucks, spraying down jungle hillsides with quad 50s and miniguns and whatnot, while enemy RPGs flew past their heads. They weren't even an official army branch, just a bunch of truck drivers who got tired of getting shot to pieces and decided to do something about it. So they built something that looked like something straight out of Mad Max, welded together with scraps from wrecked helicopters and whatever steel they could get their hands on. But we'll get to that in a moment. First, you got to understand why these fellas were in such deep trouble to begin with that made them do these things. See, by the summer of 1967, the American war effort in Vietnam had turned into one giant logistical nightmare. Hundreds of forward bases were scattered across the country, especially up in the Central Highlands, and every single one of them needed constant resupply. We're talking rifle ammo, artillery shells, fuel for helicopters and vehicles, food, medical supplies, even letters from back home. Literally millions of tons of cargo, all of it coming in by ship to coastal ports like Quai Nam. But here's the thing, those bases weren't quite near the coast. Somebody had to haul all that stuff inland, and that somebody was the truck convoys of the 8th Transportation Group. Over 100 miles of narrow, winding roads, cutting straight through jungle and mountain passes. Now, when you hear supply lines and rear echelon in most wars, you probably think of trucks driving safe and sound behind well-defended front lines. Well, Vietnam didn't work like that because there weren't no front lines. The enemy was everywhere and nowhere at the same time. And those long stretches of jungle road between bases were about as safe as a midnight walk through the south side. The Viet Cong and the North Vietnamese Army figured out real quick how American system worked. They studied American operations and they realized that these convoys were the Achilles heel of the whole war effort. Knock out the trucks, and the fire bases starve, helicopters run out of fuel, and rifles run out of ammo. Everything falls apart if this system ain't working. In the terrain, hell, it was doing them favors too. Dense jungle growing right up to 10 feet from the road edge. Sharp turns where you couldn't see what was coming. Steep grades that slowed trucks to a crawl. It was just perfect ambush country, so it's no wonder why some sections got nicknames like Devil's Hairpin and Ambush Alley, and I think you can figure out why. So what kind of protection did these convoys have? Well, that's where it gets ugly. The drivers themselves were transportation corps, not infantry. Most of them were just 20-year-old kids with basic weapons training, an M16 rifle at best, and a few magazines of ammo. Convoy security usually meant 2 or 3 military police jeeps with M60 machine guns, spread out across convoys that could be several hundred trucks long. At first, the Army brass didn't see this as a big problem because they were using the same doctrine in Korea in World War II, where ambushes on supply convoys were pretty rare and with much smaller and less organized enemy forces. But the VC and NVA were patient, disciplined, and they knew exactly what they were doing. They understood that American infantry and armor could only control small patches of territory right around their bases, and that everything in between was wide open hunting ground. So that was the situation and thinking. On September 2nd, 1967, that afternoon, a big convoy of about 90 vehicles was making its way back to Quai Nam. The road they were on had jungle pressing in tight on both sides. Visibility was garbage because of all the sharp curves. And up on the slope above the road, somewhere between 60 and 80, NVA soldiers were dug into camouflaged fighting positions just waiting. When the lead vehicles rolled into the kill zone, a recoilless rifle round slammed into the front gun jeep and killed the vehicle commander on the spot. Then a series of mines mounted on wooden planks got pulled across the road and detonated, stopping the whole column cold. The hillside lit up with automatic fire. Claymores and RPGs started popping off until the truck stopped inside the kill zone. Them drivers didn't stand a chance. They had M14s and M16s with maybe a few magazines each, and they were caught completely off guard. Some tried returning fire from their unarmored cabs, others jumped out and fought from the roadside. But the trucks got straight up overrun by enemy fighters who climbed onto the cabs and threw satchel charges inside, or just shot through the windshields at point-blank range. The ambush zone stretched damn near a kilometer, and within 10 minutes, 30 vehicles were either destroyed or disabled. 7 Americans were dead, 17 more wounded. And the enemy pulled back into the jungle before any help could arrive. Turns out this whole thing was just a test run. The NVA wanted to probe the convoy system, measure how long it took for American gunships and reaction forces to show up, and figure out how much damage they could do before they had to bug out. Helicopters from the 1st Cavalry Division got there after about 10 minutes and helped push the enemy off the hill, but by then the damage was already done. That ambush sent shockwaves through the entire 8th Transportation Group. Before September 2nd, driving a truck in Vietnam wasn't considered frontline duty. After that day, those boys knew the truth. They were sitting ducks, and to make matters worse, they were now priority targets. The Army tried to respond, but not in any really practical way. Military police started running more patrols along the routes. More checkpoints got set up, and engineers brought in roam plows to carve wide lanes through the jungle and strip back the cover where ambushes like to hide. It helped a little, but it wasn't nearly enough. The road was just too long, too remote, and flat out impossible to secure for its entire length. And the VC knew it better than anyone, as they were the masters of this kind of guerrilla warfare. Now, you might be wondering why the Army didn't just send tanks or armored personnel carriers to escort these convoys. Seems like the obvious solution, right? Well, here's the problem. Tanks and APCs were in short supply, and the ones they had were already busy supporting infantry operations and fighting at the front, if you could even call it a front in that war. There just weren't enough to spare for convoy duty. The Transportation Corps was on its own. So that's when these young fellas, most of them barely old enough to buy a beer back home, started taking matters into their own hands. They grabbed torches, wrenches, and whatever scrap metal they could find. And they started turning their cargo trucks into something that could actually fight back. So these Transportation Corps boys had a problem that nobody up the chain gave a damn about fixing for them. They needed something that could roll alongside slow-moving cargo trucks and protect them all the way through the hostile territory. And since the Army brass wasn't handing out tanks or APCs for convoy duty, well, they figured they'd just build their own versions of armored combat vehicles out of whatever crap they could get their hands on. The first attempts were about as crude as you'd expect, but it was just the beginning. They took standard 2.5-ton cargo trucks, the so-called deuce and a half, and started piling sandbags into the truck beds. They lined the sides with plywood, wired the whole mess together so it wouldn't fall off while driving, and put on 1 or 2 M60 machine guns in what was basically a bunker mounted on the truck. They also stacked some improvised armor around the cab and engine to hopefully stop a rifle round and some shrapnel. So within just a few days, these Frankenstein-looking contraptions were rolling out with convoys to see if the damn thing had any legs. Right away, tactics started changing too. Instead of bunching up too many trucks close together on the road and stretching convoys out to 200 vehicles or more, just begging to get hit. So they started spacing trucks out more, cut convoy sizes down to no more than 100 vehicles, and spread these new gun/bunker trucks throughout the column. The idea was to have some kind of armed escort roughly every 10 cargo trucks, whether that was a Jeep with an M60 or one of these janky sandbag rigs. The first couple of firefights actually showed some promise. When ambushes happened, the gun trucks rolled into the kill zone, opened up with their machine guns, and laid down enough fire to make the attackers change their minds about the attack. Meanwhile, the cargo trucks kept moving and pushed through to safety. Well, I'll be damned, the concept actually worked. But then came the rain, and the whole sandbag idea went straight to hell. They soak up water like sponges, and when that happened, all that extra weight damn near killed the trucks. The deuce and a half was only rated to carry 2.5 tons, and a bunch of waterlogged sandbags plus armor plus guns plus ammo plus a crew pushed way past that limit. Suspensions cracked, axles snapped, engines overheated trying to haul all that soggy mess up steep mountain roads. So the sandbags had to go, obviously, but that's when things started getting real interesting. Mechanics and drivers started messing around with steel instead. They went scavenging for armor plate anywhere they could find it, cutting chunks off wrecked vehicles, abandoned landing craft, or downed helicopters. The boys called it tactically borrowing, which was just a polite way of saying they stole whatever they needed. But hell, when your life depends on having a 1/4 inch of steel between you and an AK round, ain't nobody gonna lose sleep over where that steel came from. They cut these plates and welded them onto the truck beds, creating what was called a gun box. Basically, an armored compartment surrounding the cargo area where the gunners would ride and fight from. The cab got armored up too, along with the engine compartment and fuel tanks, because if any of that got shot out of action, you weren't going anywhere except a body bag. They even scrounged up some bullet-resistant glass so the driver could actually see where he was going without catching a round in the face. They kept some of the sandbags laid on the floor to absorb some of the blast if they rolled over a mine. But even with steel armor, the deuce and a half was still struggling with the weight. So pretty quick, the boys switched over to the bigger M54 5-ton trucks as their main platform. The 5-ton could handle the extra load of all that welded on armor and weaponry without blowing out its axles or overheating on every damn hill. It became the workhorse of the gun truck fleet, and most of the serious conversions from this point on started with an M54. Armament was evolving too, but we're going to tell you more about that in a bit, and you'll see why. The early rigs ran 1 or 2 M60s, which was a solid infantry weapon, but didn't exactly put the fear of God into a well-prepared ambush team. Pretty soon, crews started mounting 50 caliber M2 Browning heavy machine guns instead. Now, the M2 had been around since the 1930s and was still one of the nastiest things you could point at somebody. And jungle cover ain't helping you. So the VC had to start showing some respect for these trucks now, as it ain't so fun ambushing convoys when the convoy shoots back with something that can cut a man in half. Since there was no official program or standardized design, every single gun truck ended up being its own unique creation. It depended on what materials were laying around, who was doing the wrenching, and what the crew wanted. The crew started painting them black to make them look more intimidating. And every truck got its own name, usually something inspired by movies, songs, or just dark humor. Names like Eve of Destruction, Ace of Spades, The Untouchable. And when you're riding into ambushes on a regular basis, that truck becomes your home, your weapon, and your best chance of making it back alive. Might as well give it a name worth fighting for. The first real major test came on November 24, 1967, when a convoy got jumped in the Mongyang Pass. This stretch of road had already earned the nickname Ambush Alley, and on that day, a strong Viet Cong force showed up to prove its nickname. A heavy firefight broke out, 6 transport trucks got destroyed, and even some of the gun trucks took serious hits. Drivers were killed and wounded in the chaos. But here's the thing. The gun trucks did exactly what they were built to do. They charged into that kill zone, returned fire with everything they had, and beat the ambush back. When the smoke cleared, 41 enemy fighters were confirmed dead, and the convoy wasn't wiped out. Yeah, they took losses. This was still a war after all, but without those gun trucks, the whole convoy would have been slaughtered just like back in September. Just another pile of burning trucks and dead American boys. That fight proved the concept was more than just a desperate improvisation cooked up by a bunch of pissed off truck drivers. It actually worked. Gun trucks could protect convoys, they could kill ambushers, and they could save lives. Word spread fast through the Transportation Corps, and suddenly everybody wanted gun trucks of their own. The Army finally started paying attention too and began shipping pre-cut steel armor plates and bullet-resistant glass so the boys didn't have to spend all their time tactically borrowing through scrapyards. But even with some official support trickling in, the creativity and customization kept right on going. And things were about to get a whole lot crazier. The M54 5-ton was still the main platform, but some units started messing around with other trucks too. A few outfits converted M51 dump trucks, figuring that big old dump bed would make a solid foundation for a gun box. But the wildest modification by far was when they started mountain hole M113, armored personnel carriers onto truck beds. The M113 was a fully armored troop carrier, and its aluminum hull could stop small arms fire pretty well. Problem was, APCs were getting knocked out left and right in combat by mines and RPGs that wrecked their engines or tracks. Normally, that's just scrap metal waiting to be hauled off, but some clever sons of guns looked at those busted up hulls and saw an opportunity. They stripped out everything that wasn't armor or gun mounts, and then hoisted the armored shell onto the bed of a 5-ton truck. It was genius in a redneck sort of way, but it came with problems because an M113 hull, even stripped down, was heavy as hell. It made the truck top heavy and threw off the balance. These things were easy to roll over if the driver took a turn too fast or wasn't careful on uneven ground. And in the middle of an ambush, being careful ain't exactly your first priority. Some units mounted the APC hull facing forward, others put it on backwards, depending on how they wanted the weight distributed and where they wanted their main firepower pointed. It wasn't perfect, but it worked, and it gave destroyed APCs a second life as convoy protectors instead of just rusting away in some depot. The guns these trucks were carrying kept getting nastier too. What started as 1 or 2 M60s had already grown into 50 caliber Brownings, but crews started doubling up the 50s, then some crazy bastards figured out how to mount quadruple configurations. A few trucks got their hands on these old M45 turrets that were originally designed for anti-aircraft defense. 450s firing at once would just be deleting whatever piece of jungle might be hiding whoever was stupid enough to ambush you. Then there were the miniguns. Some crews managed to scrounge up M134 miniguns off busted helicopters and mount them on their trucks. Now, a minigun ain't like a regular machine gun. It's got multiple rotating barrels and can spit out somewhere around 4,000 rounds per minute. The sound alone was enough to make an ambush team reconsider their life choices. The VC started calling these gun trucks Dragon's Breath. On top of all that heavy stuff, crews kept personal weapons within arm's reach for when things got real close and ugly. M79, grenade launchers, plenty of hand grenades, their standard M16s, and a lot of boys actually preferred older World War II era weapons like the BAR and the Thompson submachine gun for backup. Those old guns were reliable as hell and hit hard, which is exactly what you want when somebody's running at your truck with a satchel charge. The crews themselves were getting more organized too. Early on, gun trucks were just manned by whoever volunteered or got assigned. But as the whole thing became more serious, they started standardizing crews at around 5 or 6 men per truck. An NCO would serve as the truck commander, calling shots and coordinating with the rest of the convoy. They added radios so trucks could talk to each other, which was important when your convoy stretched over a mile long and you needed to know where the ambush was hitting so they could actually respond as a unit. The idea at first was to have gun trucks spread out through the convoy, one for every 10 cargo trucks or so. But that ratio kept getting tighter as ambushes got worse. Eventually, they pushed for 1 gun truck for every 5 cargo trucks when possible, with gun trucks positioned at the front, middle, and rear of each convoy section. Convoy sizes got chopped down from those massive 100-plus vehicle columns to smaller groups of no more than 30 vehicles spaced out 20 minutes apart on the road. That way, if one section got hit, the rest could stop and stay out of the kill zone instead of piling in the kill zone like before. When an ambush kicked off, cargo trucks would keep moving and get the hell out of the kill zone no matter what, while the gun trucks did the opposite. They would drive straight toward the gunfire, shielding the cargoes and opening up with everything they had. If cargo trucks got disabled, gun trucks would roll up and pull out wounded drivers. One of the main tactics they used was called bumping. In a long convoy, the lead gun truck would roll into the kill zone, stop just long enough to lay down heavy suppressive fire. Then the second gun truck would come up and take its place. The first truck could then move on with the rest of the convoy, so nobody was left without protection if the first ambush was just a decoy for the main one down the road. Now all this escalation wasn't happening in a vacuum. The Viet Cong and North Vietnamese army were adapting right along with the Americans, and it turned into a nasty cat and mouse game. Once the enemy realized gun trucks were the real threat, they stopped wasting time on cargo trucks and started targeting the escorts first, because without the gun trucks, the rest of the convoys just sitting ducks. VC scouts would spend days watching a stretch of road, picking out the perfect ambush sites. They wanted choke points, places where the jungle grew thick right up to the road edge, sharp turns that slowed vehicles down, steep grades where trucks had to crawl. They measured how long it took for American reinforcements and helicopter gunships to show up, and they planned their attacks to be over before help could arrive. Sometimes they'd wait for days, just watching convoys pass until the perfect target came along. Fuel tankers and ammo trucks were favorites, as you can imagine what would happen if they were hit. The standard ambush playbook started with mines or buried IEDs triggered right under the lead and rear vehicles. That would trap the whole column in the kill zone. So then could come the RPGs, claymores, and recoilless rifles, and followed by machine gun fire from dug-in positions. Some VC fighters were gutsy enough to rush forward and throw satchel charges right into the truck beds. And it happened quite a few times, as you're about to hear. I've saved one such story for the end for you guys. Meanwhile, military police set up more checkpoints along the routes. Minesweeper teams went out ahead of convoys to clear the roads. Engineers brought in bulldozers to clear the jungle around the roads to deny cover to ambushers. They even sprayed Agent Orange all along the roadsides to strip away the vegetation. Sometimes AC-47 spooky gunships would fly overhead, ready to rain down minigun fire on any ambush site. But the roads were just too long, too winding, and too remote to ever make completely safe. The Army also tried fielding V-100 commando armored cars to patrol the highways around late 1969. These were actual purpose-built armored vehicles, and on paper they seemed like a good idea, but in practice they turned out to be death traps. They couldn't take hits from RPGs any better than the gun trucks could, and when they did get hit, the crews had a hell of a time getting out, unlike open Top Gun trucks where at least they could jump the hell out if it caught fire. They never replaced the improvised gun trucks, which says something about just how well those redneck engineered rigs actually work. The VC couldn't terrorize convoys the way they had back in '67. Ambushes still happened. Men still died, but the wholesale slaughter of entire convoys became rare. The combination of gun trucks, better tactics, and aggressive response had made convoy duty survivable, even if it was still one of the most dangerous jobs in Vietnam. And to make this achievement even more remarkable, the men who crewed these trucks were technically non-combatants. They were transportation corps, like we said, and most of them were young guys barely into their 20s who never expected to see the kind of combat they ended up in. But they earned an unusually high number of Bronze Stars and Purple Hearts for a unit that wasn't supposed to be on the front lines. The 8th Transportation Group as a whole got awarded a Presidential Unit Citation for their work, which tells you just how much ass these boys kicked, despite being written off as just truck drivers. And some of them earned the highest honor there is. On February 23, 1971, a convoy was moving through the An Khe Pass, a stretch of road known as a hotspot for ambushes. Near the front was a 5-ton gun truck named Brutus, rolling alongside 6 fuel tankers. When they hit a sharp bend in the road, the hillside lit up with enemy fire. Brutus opened up immediately, trying to cover the tankers, but 2 of them went up in flames anyway. Other gun trucks raced forward to help, but then a rocket slammed into Brutus, killing a crewman Callison and wounding 2 others. Their minigun jammed and things were looking real bad. But then everything went quiet for a moment, like sort of a brief pause in the chaos, when a squad of NVA troops came charging out of the jungle straight at Brutus. One of them bastards hurled a grenade right into the open gun box and it landed in the middle of the crew. But Specialist 4, Larry Daw, saw it coming. He shouted a warning to the others and threw himself on top of that grenade. A second later, the blast killed him instantly, but it saved every other man in that truck, although they were all wounded. The driver, not even knowing what had just happened behind him, saw the spray of red fluid over his cabin and punched the gas and drove Brutus right through the smoke and flames of them burning tankers, getting the wounded crew out of the kill zone and to a checkpoint where they could be medevaced. Larry Dahl was awarded the Medal of Honor posthumously. He was 22 years old and he sacrificed himself consciously to save his fellow gun truck crewmen. When the war finally ended, most of the gun trucks got left behind. They were too beat up and too heavy to ship home and too unofficial to be worth preserving. A lot of them just got scrapped or abandoned in Vietnam. Ain't no museums full of gun trucks. Ain't no parades for the boys who crewed them. And for a long time, most people didn't even know they existed. But the concept didn't die. What those young truck drivers figured out with welding torches and stolen steel became the foundation for modern convoy protection doctrine. Every up-armored vehicle, every MRAP, every escort tactic used in Iraq and Afghanistan owes something to those boys in Nam who got tired of being sitting ducks and decided to build themselves something that could fight back. And that's the story of the gun trucks, y'all. We'll be covering more lesser-known things from the Vietnam War in the same laid-back, no-bullshit way for us ordinary people who want to pay respect to our ancestors and countrymen who gave everything and more for their homeland. So if you're interested in something like this, stick around for more coming soon.